Good afternoon, good morning in some cases. Welcome to our webinar presentation today. We are recording this, and for those of you that are listening in post, we will be answering questions at the end of this, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to leave my email at the end, direct link to me, and you can ask any questions whatsoever. Hopefully we'll answer a number of your questions today. I've got two colleagues with me here. I've got Kit and Christina, who joined me from the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, as well as Social Impact. And I welcome everybody today. Respectful and mindful of your time, we're going to keep this to 30 minutes. We'll have questions. Feel free to throw anything in the chat, the Q&A, and I'll answer those questions as we're going through this. So welcome to everybody today for sure. So let me start by acknowledging that Queen's University, the Smith School of Business, our studio facilities here in Kingston, are all situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. And there's also significant Métis community, and there are First Peoples from other nations across Turtle Island present today. We're grateful to be able to live, to learn, to provide this webinar here today, and grateful to be on these lands. So welcome to the Queen's University and the Smith School of Business within Queen's University. You can see it here. It's a beautiful campus. And we're going to be talking about a virtual campus, but please know that you are very much a part of the Queen's University and the Smith School of Business here in Kingston. Today, we're going to talk about the Certificate in Professional Impact Analysis, and we're here in February. I meant to have a webinar in January, but we were very busy with our first class, and we had a oversubscribed class, which was great. We're full from the January to June session. Here we're talking about enrollment for the July to December session. And we've got about 10 people that have already enrolled in the program. So welcome to those students for sure as we're going through this. And I know we've got a number that we've lined up as we've gone through this. We've got people that are still in the discussion phase, and you're in the information gathering phase, and we welcome all of that for sure today. So our plan is to build out that class and have another great group of people that similar to what we've got in today or through this winter session, but this is focused on the July to December session, and I'll talk more about the details of that. 6 months, but lots of time for the program itself. So this is the only program that measures good, and we're going to talk obviously in specifics, but this idea of good and what that means and how it relates to what you do in various areas of for-profit, not-for-profit, government, NGO, whatever it might be that you're involved in. But the Certificate in Professional Impact Analysis speaks to that. My name is Glenn Hollis. I'm the director of the program. Delighted to be part of this. I am part of the Center for Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Social Impact, and I'm working with the professors across the Queen's campus. So what's the story here? If we just sort of go 30,000 feet, rise above this, and again, I'm a marketer by my background, and I always talk about great brands, and that doesn't matter whether you're for-profit, not-for-profit, government, whatever. But it's about these great organizations that have this sense of a greater purpose, that they care about the planet, they care about the people, they care about communities, and they care about the things that they do, the actions that they take, the impact that they have on their stakeholders, as we'll talk about. So these leaders, you as part of that, are part of these great brands, and they put their money where their head and their heart is, and they invest in impact projects. And you know those that exist within your organization or will exist in your organization. And it's a sense of doing good. And these organizations, because of that, can command a greater sense of loyalty among their employees, a greater sense of engagement among their customers or members, what have you. Their workforce is more productive. It's just a stickier brand, and a brand that rises above the pack. And you know those great brands, and you're probably working within them if you're interested in what we're talking about today. Plain and simple, doing more good is good for an organization's success, and it's good for the world. And it's this balance, this idea of, paying it forward and doing good things and measuring them. But also, listen, I've worked in many for-profit companies, and it's also about the impact on the bottom line to a company and how that has a greater sense of loyalty among its stakeholders. So our mission here within this program is about enabling leaders like yourself to measure good, simply put, so they can do more good. The more you can measure it, the more you can provide proof that it is doing good, and the more good you can do. So we ask you to prepare yourself for this idea of evidence-based decision making. And it's not different from what you're doing in your organization today. Perhaps it's a layer deeper where you're able to really get at the sense of what is moving the needle in terms of how we measure good. So let's talk a little bit about impact projects and kind of what that means. So there's two macro types or two camps. One is this idea of community and societal betterment projects. Think CIBC's Run for the Cure, Tim Hortons Children's Foundation, or think municipal governments, federal, provincial, or NGOs that are existing in projects, providing projects within their community. And what is the impact of those projects, feeding communities, after school programs, children's organizations, et cetera. The other is businesses that are looking at and listening to their customers and talking about doing projects and production that fall into the good camp. Ocean Steel, one of our MBAs at the program that I used to run, the accelerated MBA program here at Queen's at the business school, he's involved with Ocean Steel, and they listened to their customers, and their customers were very interested in green steel and what that meant: a lower carbon footprint, better for the world, and building out their projects with green steel. So they need to look at what is the impact of that from is it going to be profitable for our company? Is our customer going to demand it? And also looking at what is the good that it's going to do to the world. So Warby Parker has another example where they buy a pair, give a pair, or Petro-Canada, where they were looking at installing this idea of washer refill stations versus the plastic that you may sell. So all of these and these different types, whether it's government, NGO, for-profit, what have you, are working in these idea of good or impact projects. So how do you measure it? Let's talk a little bit about that. But first of all, why would you want to measure it? And why you'd want to measure it, very simply, is you've got more and more scrutiny going on in your organization. We measure all kinds of things now. We measure financial performance, customer sat, productivity, all kinds of things, our employees, their engagement. But few companies, organizations, entities really understand how do we measure social, environmental, and economic impact projects. And not the least, they want to do it with the same rigor and discipline. And that's really what we are providing with this program. So the good news is you can. Best practices, tools, methods, toolbox that we'll talk about providing you within the modules that will, and the lectures that we'll be providing, the capstone sessions. All of these are meant to look at the ROI for social projects, for impact investments. So why is it important? Well, you've got a lot of people looking at things like that. They want to understand when we do things like impact or corporate social responsibility or new production capabilities, how is it going to impact and how are we going to measure it? Because you want to make sure that you can provide a sense of return. Here is what we do, here is how we measure it, and here is the impact. We are moving the needle. And these are critically and increasingly more important in organizations. And more stakeholders are really looking at companies and saying, it's great that we're doing things, you're doing things, but really want to understand, are you doing them with a purpose? Are you doing them with a sense of movement, of improvement, of impact? So this idea of measuring good is something that is really, really burgeoning within organizations, amongst stakeholders, suppliers, employees, community, government, shareholders, what have you. So that's why it's important, and we want to measure that. So how do we measure it? Well, we measure it through impact analysis. Again, think about the ways that you measure things from a financial performance standpoint. We're going to provide and really outline tools within impact foundations, impact accounting, and don't get scared around the idea of accounting. It's not rigorous in terms of deep math, and I'll talk about that. But we also want to look at evaluating and learning. Critically, you want to be able to tell a story about the projects and impact investments that you're conducting. So in comparison, you do this already. As I mentioned, you do it within financial accounting and management. You do it for two reasons. One is compliance and reporting, basics, but the other is strategically. You want to make better decisions. And that's the same rigor and discipline that we talk about when we want to provide that within the program itself. Better reporting, side by each alongside the financial reporting, providing this idea of rigor and transparency with good that you're doing, with impact projects. So let's talk a little bit about that in terms of the content and delivery of this program. It runs over 6 months, intentionally providing ample time for you to take in and enjoy the lectures. They're all online. They're all recorded lectures. Each of the lectures comprised of a module, 3 modules. There's 4 lectures within each module, and then there's a capstone at the end of each of the modules. And I'll go into some detail because we've had questions asked before. What does that look like? When are they? But basically, we provide a lecture per week, and that can be enjoyed, rewatched over that week, or even well after the fact. You're going to have access to the platform to be able to look at and drink in the lectures. And then you're able to use those lectures. There's a mini quiz after each of the lectures that builds up your understanding of measuring impact, measuring good. At the end of the 4 lectures, at the end of each module, there's a capstone, and that's when you engage live, but virtual, into a day on a Friday where you will be able to put it in your schedule. You will connect with your other colleagues. There's great networking that goes on, sharing. You meet with coaches, you meet with your faculty, and it's a day to go through cases and understand how to apply the toolbox that we provide. So we've got 3 of those, 3 modules, 4 lectures each, a capstone at the end, and at the end of that, there is an exam. So there's a final exam, a certification exam, where you will then be designated as a professional impact analyst, as provided and designated by the Queen's University and the Smith School of Business. So I'll go into more detail at the end, but we've got great faculty that are teaching this. We've got Dr. Elspeth Murray, who is the lead for the Center for Entrepreneurship Impact, or Entrepreneurship Innovation and Social Impact. And also we've got Dr. Bhavan Kashi and Dr. Chris Cotton, 2 economics professors. So we're marrying the business school and the economics department in this intentionally. Now, Bhavan and Chris have been providing this program for years, and only recently, at the end of last year, did we gather together with the business school, update it, put in interesting and new cases, and make sure that it was applicable to government, not government, for-profit, NGOs, right across the board. Anybody and everybody involved in impact projects, doing good and wanting to measure that good. So the program costs $7,500 plus tax. It is tax deductible or tax credit. A T2202 is issued. A lot of people, tie this into their training program at work. We've intentionally put this so it's spaced out beautifully and spread out over the 6 months if you want. You can pay $2,500 per module plus tax. That's the 3 content modules, all the lectures, the capstone, all of the material, the cases, access to the faculty weekly. They've got coffee chats. In fact, there's one following this program for the current class. And then it's also the certification exam, and to be able to be designated and badged as a certified professional impact analyst. So that program is designed to be very accessible to students. And again, we were oversubscribed for this current class. We've already got 10 that have signed up for the class starting in July. We're probably going to have a class ideally of 25, although, as I say, we tipped over the scale in terms of our planned numbers for this one. But there's ample time and ample room, and I'm happy to answer questions as we're going through this. But that's the program overview, that's the cost. Looking into the modules themselves, the first module is really impact foundations, and this is an overview, looking at those things and how to measure it. There's a toolbox that we will provide in justifying rigorous impact, choosing methods and techniques. We're going to go through quantifying, valuing impacts, and cases and examples are used in the program itself. The second module is called impact accounting. And this is really a professional impact toolbox to track, to document, looking at cost and inputs and all kinds of decision criteria. Again, cases, examples, You're going to be using those for the toolbox that you'll get as part of this. How do I measure impact? How do I estimate and report? How do I use that from an accounting parallel standpoint? And again, this is meant to be very accessible to those that have different backgrounds. It's not an accounting program, although the discipline and rigor that goes into this is intentional. And then finally, the third module, 4 lectures, a capstone before the final exam, is meant to look at evaluating and learning. And this is really measuring how to improve the design of how we look at the criteria for measuring current projects, future projects. Same thing, you're going to have a toolbox, cases, examples. All of this is best practices, ethics, pitfalls, evidence culture. How do we build that? How do we engage people? We talked about stakeholders that are very, very interested in understanding how do you measure impact. And a big part of this is understanding when you gather the proof that impact projects are either making sense and doing good and moving the needle, or you decide we're going to use that measure and discard that project, but go to a new one. It's basically really understanding how to create a story, sharing a story, building that narrative around these are the things that we do. Here's how we measure it. Here's the proof, the rigor and discipline that we are doing good. The company is doing good. The organization is doing good. We as a government are doing good and doing well when it comes to the projects we're undertaking and investing into, providing that evidence to stakeholders and really telling the story. So questions we've had asked before, is this a mathy program? No. I mean, as you hear one of your professors, Chris Cotton, Dr. Cotton said it, it's not about math. It's about making people comfortable with the use of economics and analysis and leaving them with just the right amount of numbers and math that you'll need for this program. But it is not about math. It's not expected to make you math savvy, nor do you need to be math savvy to get into this. And to be clear, it's about accessibility to a wide range. And it's about using ideas and not math when it comes to the program itself. So happy to answer questions on that and throw in any questions as we're going through this. Want to make sure that we answer them. And those that are listening to this, we've got 53 people that have signed up for today. I know we've got some of you, but many of you, most of you are listening to this in post as you will get, everybody will have this sent out to them in the next couple of days. And I'm happy to answer questions as we're going through this. So let me talk a little bit about some of the cases or examples. So here's one, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was very interested in trying to understand if we want to switch to something called social plastic, recycled plastic from developing countries. They wanted to understand and measure that. And of course, you can imagine the stakeholders as a public company that they've got, their bottlers, customers, etc. They wanted to measure, is it socially justifiable? Is it financially viable, critical? And is it feasible at scale? If we're going to do it, it's no good to do it within one small defined area. Can we really do economies of scale and roll this out? So that's something that they were interested in doing. RBC, reporting social return on investments. There's more and more scrutiny on ESG investments and stocks and portfolios. Is it a defensible methodology? Are we able to indeed measure the social return? And what additional data do we need if we want to provide substantial, concrete, and credible reports to stakeholders, whether there's investors, shareholders, employees, community, what have you? Tourmaline Oil Corp, they were looking at switching their natural gas powered production machinery. And as you can imagine, sitting in the oil patch, what's the impact on greenhouse gas emissions? What's the net financial and economic impact as we look at this evolution of what we do? We are an oil company. How can we manage this? Yet we want to make sure that we're doing right by our community, our country, our world when it comes to the things that we do and evolve naturally with the world. The World Health Organization and the International Finance Corp was interested in looking at food safety and food safety infrastructure and investments into that. How do we measure it, these improvements? How do we cost it out when it comes to finite money that we've got? And what's the value of benefits when we look at this, whether it's health or trade? So they wanted intentionally to be able, they've got tons of investors into there or providers of funding, whether it's government or not government, or private centers. They wanted to understand, how can we justify what we do, and how can we ensure that there's a measure of that. Tim Hortons Children's Foundation, I was involved with Tim Hortons for many, many years. And a critical aspect, a genuinely good aspect of Tim Hortons was the foundation for economically disadvantaged children. 6 camps across Canada and the US. Should we invest in another camp? Making that decision. Should we do it? Can we do it justifiably by drawing more rent royalty, RRNA, rent royalty and advertising from our foundation and from the franchisees? Should we ask customers at Camp Day, Coffee Day, as you know, and the Camp Day festivities that go around that? Or should we take that and do more good, better good, different good into another area that we work in? Is it Tim Hortons Children's Foundation, or is it Timbits Hockey? Is it Smile Cookie? Is it looking at other community projects? The other side of Tim Hortons is the corporation itself. And we intentionally looked at doing good as well as doing well. So when it came to things like the coffee that we procure from Brazil, as an example, we really, really looked at, because there was tons of fanfare and notoriety, and media coverage around this idea of fair trade coffee. Starbucks had it, McDonald's has it, but we wanted to understand, is that really an investment into an entity that is going to provide the right kind of good? And by that, what we meant was, are we going to ensure that small hectare farmers, small shareholder farmers, are going to benefit from that? Because the reality of fair trade is, you sign up in it and have to pay to be a part of that. You can sell your coffee only to one entity, and then they sell it at a profit to organizations like Starbucks. Whereas something that we created called the Coffee Partnership Program invested into these small hectare owners, small farmers, and really helped them understand best practices when it came to building up their crop, providing the right kind of fertilizer, getting the highest yield, getting high quality, getting the best price, because we didn't demand that they sell it to us only. And also providing schools and education for the community in which they work. This was what we wanted to do with the Coffee Partnership Program. But how do you measure that? How do you make sure you measure it and be able to report it out? Fair hiring practices, looking at things like, measuring the impact of converting over the fleet to a non-combustible fuel. If we wanted to do that, what's the value of that, and how do we justify it? So these are some examples of things that you'll cover. And again, you can imagine that this covers a lot of what you've done within your organization or will do. I mentioned Ocean Steel. Very simply, 2 different things that they were looking at, with a goal to really, create a third, which was, it's good for both. And that is it good for our customers? They're demanding it. Is it good for our company from a profitability, from a growth standpoint? And is it good for the world? And this is something that they wanted to be able to say, it actually does both. And measuring that was something that is critically important to Ocean Steel. So we're coming to the end. We talk about who should attend this professional impact analyst program. Leaders like you that want to make a difference, people that are involved in some capacity, whether directly or indirectly, or eventually in the good that their organization does, and have the responsibility to measure that and create the key performance indicators. It's a burgeoning career area. There's more and more scrutiny on it from the stakeholders that I talked about, and there's more and more effort underway at organizations across all different stripes and kinds in terms of designating either ownership or a direct title, where it is about measuring impact, a chief impact analyst or chief impact officer. So we wanted to create this program, this partnership, this marriage between economics department and business school, because we knew it is growing. So as Dr. Bauman, your other professor in this program, talks about, the chief impact officer of tomorrow will need this foundational knowledge, and critically understand how to tell the story. Rigor, discipline, evidence, but how to tell the story. And that's something that we wanted to make sure was a massive part of this. So again, throw in any questions that you've got here. This is my email. Feel free to go onto the website. You can simply Google CPIA, Queen's University, or Smith. Take a look at it. It's detailed. There's information that I, intentionally didn't want to cover in this half an hour, respectful of your time. Flip me an email. Ask any questions you have whatsoever. Throw them in the chat now, and we'll go to those. But again, really hope that you can envision this as part of your career opportunity. It's a great program. As I say, the class that we're working with right now, this January to June cohort, is having a wonderful time. They're going through the first module now. They're actually through this is the last week of the last lecture, and the capstone starts in a couple of weeks, actually 2 weeks tomorrow. And then there's the other modules I mentioned. So anything that you've got as far as questions, please let me know. Let me go up to the questions now, and we will see. Got one in there. Any organizations designations like professional engineer? Let me answer this in a couple of ways. We have engineers in the program now because we know that that's a group, a professional organization that is interested in having measures like this. In fact, the lecture last week talked about engineering and the measure of impact projects within the engineering space. We are looking at aggressively having this endorsed by organizations, whether it's professional engineer, CPA, the UN, World Health Organization, World Bank, whatever it might be. But we're definitely looking at on the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. We're definitely looking at organizations that will provide some endorsement of this, because we know it's a growing area. But absolutely, Dusty, the professional engineering space would be and is a wonderful opportunity for sure. Other question we had was around the specifics as far as, and throw in any questions you've got for sure. Specifics around what is the module, what do the modules look like? And put together just a little something here I'll show you. This is actually on the website, but I wanted to share this. So I talked about the 3 different kinds of modules, or the 3 steps of the modules. We've got impact foundations, we've got the second module, which is impact accounting, and we've got the third, which is evaluating and learning. Let me go back. So the July to December schedule looks like this, and there's intentionally ample time provided, flexibility provided. We've got most students that are in Canada. We've got some internationally, that because of the way this is structured, they can be on those international timelines. But and we certainly can accommodate our left to right across Canada for this program and across the US. But the lectures are, there's 1 lecture a week, and the first lecture for the July to December program will come out a week of July 14th. It's issued on OnQ, our platform that you're going to have access to, a net ID, a Queen's University ID. And then you will have ample time to watch, rewatch again that series of lectures, or that lecture for the first one. And then there's a short quiz, really simple, 6 questions at the end of each of the, based on the content. And then the next week, again, you can go back and look at the previous week, but the next week we'll have the July 21st, and so on. July 28th, August 4th, the 4th lecture. You can go back and forth between the lectures. There's a mini quiz. And then there's the capstone day, where we bring it all together. You meet with your coaches that are part of the program. You meet with your faculty that are part of the program. You meet with each other, because you're going to be on teams and groups as you're going through this interesting day. And that's what the modules look like. And you complete 3 of those. Impact accounting, we're into September now, ample time. And it's about looking at, the ways that you may measure, and the tools that you'll get, and the cases that you'll go work through. Same thing, 4 lectures, back and forth access to them. And then, of course, the capstone day. The final module, evaluating and learning, we're now into October, poking our nose into November. And those content and lectures are released weekly, access to them. You can go back to week 1 if you want, and back to the first module. But we've got a capstone at the end of that. And then following that, in early December, I believe it's December 6th, there's going to be the final exam. And again, that's something you do online. You'll have ample time to do that. It is based entirely on the lectures that you're taking, as well as reading that's provided, cases, etc. and it's intentionally very flexible and very manageable. So hopefully that answers a little bit about the overview. I've got some other questions here. Chelsea, does the certification ever expire? Are there any requirements around continuing education? No, it doesn't expire. However, we will be providing updates for you. And again, it's meant to be, similar to other professional organizations where you will continue to take on new and advancements that may exist within the certification itself. And you will be part of that community and the network and the alumni that will ensure that we have engagement with. What is the module grading breakdown in relationship to the course grading scheme? So basically, you need to pass each of the quizzes. And again, we're talking about a 6-question quiz at the end of each of the lectures that is based on the previous lecture weeks. The quiz itself is not intended to be daunting, overwhelming. It's rigorous, it's focused, it's challenging, but it's incredibly interesting. So you need to pass your quizzes, you need to be a part of the capstone day, you work with your team on some capstone projects during the day, and then you need to pass the final exam and attain at least a B. B overall and B within your final grade. And again, we work with you. There's coffee chat sessions where you can ask the professor anything if you're having any kinds of challenge or questions about the content. So those are held weekly to be able to provide that background and information. So challenging, interesting, but again, this is meant to be very accessible, and we want to create more and more professional impact analysts for sure as we're going through this. So any other questions that you've got, feel free to reach out to me. I'll provide my email again. And, the intent of this is to be able to give you a sense of what is going on in this program, how is it structured, what will I get out of it, and how is it going to impact my career? And I can tell you, it's a massively growing part of business, whether that's for-profit, not-for-profit, all different types of government, all 3 different levels of government and organization. So thank you for your time. Those that are listening in post, and again, we've had 53 that have signed up for today. I'm happy to answer any questions. Hopefully this was informational. We're now 12:34 Eastern time. Thank you for your patience. Kit and Christina, thank you for being a part of this, and have a great day. Stay safe, and I hope to hear from you. All the best.